This video I'm talking about the big martial art teacher. I was thinking about this today, and this is my thoughts on it. Somebody could be born with good genes. Somebody could be born big and tall, and that's not something that anybody could teach. And what I see is, if there's a big martial arts master or so-called master, and he's already big and large, let's say somebody's large and big, like some of these football players or basketball players, like they're 6'3", 220 pounds, solid muscle. Like, my thing is, what can they teach you when what they have, what they possess, is something that they're born with? Like, you cannot teach somebody to grow taller, but you can teach somebody to get stronger, to gain more strength. That's what personal trainers do. You could train somebody to be faster with more speed. You could train somebody to be more flexible. But how much of it is this person's actual hard work and skill level and athleticism, and how much of it is just what they're naturally born with? When you are assessing whether or not somebody's capable or qualified to help you on your journey in the martial arts, especially within the combative aspect, it's a skill, it's a talent, it's not about size. Actually, the people that are big and strong and tall, I kind of feel they have less to teach, because if they're going to use their natural advantages within a sparring or fighting context, then whatever they're displaying is not from skill and talent and hard work, but it's just what they're born with. So there's less for them to teach, because they cannot teach you to have good genes. They cannot teach you to be tall and big. If anything, they could maybe teach you just minor things, nutrition, how to train to get strong. But if somebody's just naturally strong and they don't even train, but then they're strong anyway, they can't teach you their strength if it's just natural. If they're naturally tall, if they're born tall, they can't teach you to use, like, the range that they were born with. So, I've been teaching a lot of adults, and I've been teaching children as well, and time and time again I see and I notice that when you round up a bunch of people that are untrained in the martial arts, untrained in combat, and you just round them up, 100 of them, and you just have them fight, or you have them spar, time and time again, it's the bigger people that have an advantage, a natural advantage against the smaller people. And people are so used to watching combat sport, they don't realize the reality of how real fighting is. They're used to seeing woman against woman, welterweight against welterweight, middleweight versus middleweight, heavyweight versus heavyweight. They don't ever see the reality of how real combat is, and where it doesn't. There are no weight classes. There is no gender discrimination. It's just two people angry at each other, and now they want to fight. And the bigger person always has the advantage. it's like they're naturally stronger. They naturally can hit harder. They can naturally take more hits. So when you got a 120-pound person trying to defend himself against somebody that's 185 pounds, this 120-pound person is at a huge disadvantage. And this 185-pound person is not a martial artist. He's not a master. He's not a teacher. He's just somebody who's just born bigger, so now he has an advantage over the smaller person. So it's like having a bunch of high school people that are untrained in the martial arts fighting against a bunch of people that are in elementary. It's like the bigger people have that advantage, and it's not anything that they could teach. It's just how they were born. And sometimes I see, okay, sure, this person could fight, but is it only because he's bigger, he was born big, and that's why he could fight? Is not because he actually trained in the sciences of combat and he really knows the strategy. And that's not something you're really born with. That's something that you gotta work hard towards. Skill and talent is something you work hard towards. It's not just using your size to your advantage in a fight. When you're using your size to your advantage in a fight, it's not, to me, it's not really anything that you could just teach somebody. So I see, in my eyes, the most qualified martial art teachers out there are the people that have a disadvantage, a natural disadvantage, and they have to work really hard towards turning their disadvantages into advantages, or work really hard towards equalizing themselves towards the people who have a natural advantage through just pure effort. It's like somebody's already born with a handicap, and even when he's born with a handicap, he still is able to somehow outperform the people that are born with natural gifts and talent, natural physical gifts. So meaning, if you got a person who's 7'7" and he could dunk a basketball, well, he's not going to really be teaching you how to dunk a basketball just by dunking a basketball, because the only reason he could dunk a basketball is not because he worked hard to learn how to dunk a basketball. It's because he was just born big, and he could just do it because he was born that way, opposed to a person who's 5 foot tall and then he could dunk a basketball because he's been training to increase his vertical for 20 years straight, and now his vertical is over 5 feet because he's been training so hard, and through all that time he was finally able to dunk a basketball at the height of 5 feet tall. And that is real skill and talent and hard work, because he wasn't born to have an advantage. Or if you compare it into an economical standpoint, somebody's born into wealth. He can't teach you how to build wealth because he was born into it. Okay, you might be wealthy, but he cannot teach you to build wealth. He was born into it. He didn't work hard towards that. Compare that to somebody who was born in poverty, and then through time he built himself up to become wealthy. Now he could teach you how to build wealth because he put in the hard work to do it. And to me, to find the most qualified teachers out there in the martial arts, usually it's going to be the people that are smaller, or even maybe the woman out there. Because you got to give props to a woman who trains really hard in the martial arts, and then say she could outperform over 50% of the men out there in combat because of her dedication towards her training. She might be 5'2". She might only weigh 110 pounds, but because she trains so much, there's not that many people out there that could outdo her in combat. I think there's so much more that you can learn from her than you can learn from the fighters that are being glamorized nowadays, who are like former football players or just people, former WWE wrestlers who are massively strong and strung up on steroids and over 6'3" tall and super muscular. I mean, they are not really gonna teach you the true skills and talents and what it takes to outperform somebody who has an advantage over you naturally because they're born a certain way and you weren't. They might just be entertaining to watch, just two big guys trying to destroy each other, but it doesn't mean that they would be the most qualified teachers out there, because they're just fighting. They're just big people fighting, and it just happens to be entertaining because they're just big, and every punch that they throw, every kick that they throw is deadly because they're just big people. So imagine a big person, 6'5", 250 pounds. He doesn't even need to train in combat and he could beat up a lot of people. Just from his pure size alone, he's a threat. Now, how could he teach others to be like him? To be destructive like he is, when he's just born to be that way? You know, but when you're talking about smaller people, like a Bruce Lee who's only like 5'7.5", a Jet Li who's shorter, smaller, a Jackie Chan who's shorter and smaller, a Donnie Yen who's shorter and smaller, and then they can outperform people, you know, a foot bigger than them, 6 inches bigger than them, 50 pounds more than them, 100 pounds more than them, and they could truly defend themselves against larger people. That shows more skill and strategy, because they have to have skill and strategy in order to survive against people that big. But a big person, almost everybody is smaller than him. He doesn't even need skill and talent to overcome these smaller people, because he has that natural advantage over everybody, and he can't teach you that. So that's what I see. You know, other examples might be something like gymnastics, where that's actually catered to smaller people. You know, and then a smaller person might be able to do, like, say 50 pull-ups because he's small, he's light. But a bigger person is going to be harder to do that because he has a lot of weight to pull up there, and all that weight is going to be working against him. So you're not going to see that many large gymnasts out there, because their bodies aren't built for that. You know, so what I see is that big martial art teachers, sometimes people have to be aware, are they truly able to teach me the skills required to be proficient in combat, or am I just admiring them because they're large people and you won't ever be able to do what they could do because you're not a large person yourself? And I compare it to me looking up to Michael Jordan when I was little, not really understanding that no matter how much I try to be like him, I will never be like him because I was not born to be like him. He cannot teach me to be 6'6". He cannot teach me how to dunk over people and do what he does in the basketball court, because I'm not born to be like him. Now, if somebody was even smaller than me, say a Muggsy Bogues, say he's 5'2", and then he's doing really well in the NBA, then that's something he could teach me. There's something I could learn there, because somebody who's even smaller than me was able to make it to the NBA. I'm even taller than this person. What does he know? What type of skills and talents does he have that enabled him to get to that level of the NBA? You know, there's people out there who don't even play basketball, but they're just simply in the NBA because they're so tall and nobody else is as tall as them, so they're just automatically in the NBA because nobody's taller than them. They don't even have to know how to play, and they're in the NBA. Now, can these people really teach you to be good at basketball when they don't even play basketball, but they're just given a free ticket to enter into the NBA just because they're born tall? And nobody could teach you, to be tall. It's unteachable. So that's the thing I would like to question for some of these people is like, are you learning from your teacher just simply because he's taller than you? Not truly because he's very necessarily skillful in combat? Because to me, to test a teacher's true ability in combat, you would have to put him up against people that are way larger than him consistently and see how well he performs in those situations. A teacher in the martial arts who's truly a master shouldn't only be proficient in what he does against people smaller than him, and then when it comes to people larger than himself, he cannot perform. Then that's showing a huge lack of development in his growth. Because I feel that real great martial artists out there they find a way through their skills and their talents and their hard work to overcome people that are taller, bigger, stronger, faster, younger. They find a way through experience and hard work. But when somebody is already born so large and there's so few of the population that's even larger than them, whatever they're displaying, whatever they're trying to teach, to me, it might not even be that teachable, because they're born to have these advantages, and they're just going to use these advantages every time they fight or every time they spar. And then you're admiring advantages of which they simply did not really work hard towards, which enables them to teach you how to do it yourself, but they just were born with that. And it's almost like you're wasting your time trying to strive after something that's unachievable. And not just in the context of a big person being tall, but also in the context of the people that are on steroids. You know, there's a lot of these fighters out there, for example, and these athletes in general that are on steroids, and they don't even tell you they're on steroids, because of course it's against the law, and of course they're going to lose their respect, they're going to get banned, they're going to get put in jail, they're going to get sued, they're going to lose all their money that they were rewarded with, lose all their opportunities. There's absolutely no reason for them to even admit they're on steroids, but they are on steroids, and they are falsifying the reality of what can even be achievable through natural effort and training and hard work. And they're trying to falsify themselves as teachers to teach you something that is unteachable, unless they break down and tell you the truth that, hey, I've been taking steroids for 10 years, and if you want to reach this level of which I've reached to, then you better do that as well. And then it's not hard work necessarily for the things that they could do, but it's just them taking a drug to get that advantage. So I think there's a lot of false out there. People are seeking guidance from people strung up on steroids. They're seeking guidance from people that are just born big. And these two components have nothing to do with working hard through real Kung Fu. Because a person that works hard through real Kung Fu, he overcomes challenges that are beyond him. And he does that consistently over and over and over again. And then you see there's something about the way that he lives his life, there's something about the way that he trains that gives him that advantage. He wasn't born that way. Because if he was born that way, and you weren't born that way, there's no way you're going to learn something of which he was just born with. You know, it's like somebody that's born double jointed, and then you're admiring how flexible he is in whatever area that he's double jointed in. That's not something he could teach you. That's just something he's born with. But if you learn from somebody who started off inflexible and then all of a sudden he trained for 20 years to become flexible, there's a lot to learn there. Because he worked 20 years to get to where he was at as far as flexibility is concerned. So I think people should be aware of that. Like, what are they actually learning from this teacher? Is it something that they're born with? If there's something that they're born with, they can't teach you that. You're either born with it yourself or you're not. And to pay attention to more of the people that are less in your face with their talents and skills. Because it could be a woman, or it could be a smaller person, or somebody who's just more hidden, that actually is somebody that's truly qualified in teaching, because he knows through his entire life that he's basically always been the underdog, and he's found a way to come up on top even though he's the underdog. I think especially in America, there's a lot of people overtaking the martial arts scene just because they're big people, just because they're strung up on steroids. You got like football players pro wrestlers, basketball players, whoever, everybody's so large, and that's just like, that's what America's all about. Bigger is always better. That's what they think. Every single sport in America is always about being big. Football players, basketball players, pro wrestlers, boxing. I mean, it's like everything's dominated by the big people out there. But to me, if you're not born big, what can you really learn from these people? Even Hollywood is catered towards the bigger people. It's like if you're under 6 feet tall, you can't even audition, because you gotta be at least 6 feet tall to even be in Hollywood. That's part of the requirements. And it's like, you could be as great as an actor as you want, but then they just automatically discount you no matter how great you are, because you're not big enough. But to me, martial arts is one of the things where a big person cannot really teach you to be good at it. Because a lot of times, whatever he's using to his advantage in that fight or in that sparring match, it's not even something that he worked towards. It's just something, he's just doing it because this is how he is. This is how he was born. It's like a big person just sitting on top of a small person and choking him to death. What is there to learn from that? That's not martial arts. That's not hard work. That's just a person taking advantage of another person because he's bigger. So, those are some things, I'm thinking about, what I mean? Because everything is always being dominated by big people. But to me, the martial arts is not for big people. The martial arts are for the smaller people. And they train really hard to give themselves an advantage over the big people. Through their hard work and their training, they get an advantage. To me, martial arts is almost like gymnastics, where this is not a big man thing. This is for the smaller people. One of the very few things out there available or specifically designed for smaller people. This is not for the large people. Like basketball is for large people. Football is for large people. But martial arts is not for large people. It's for the smaller people. And those are the individuals that they have no choice but to work hard in order to give themselves an advantage over the larger people. And it's not necessarily that just because you're tall, automatically you could fight, or you could defend yourself. Clearly there's very big people out there that do not know how to defend themselves. But what I'm saying is that the smaller people are exactly the ones that are most qualified in teaching these people how to defend themselves, because who else better to teach than the person who's already demonstrated proficiency in what he does, even against all odds. But how could a big person who's so large teach a smaller person to defend himself when this person is born small? How does a big person know how it feels to be a small person? how could he teach the small person when this person's already, it's a different world for a small person and a big person. It's like a person who's born into wealth trying to teach a person that's poor to become rich. How does this person that's born into wealth, how can he truly understand how it's like to be poor when he's born into wealth? He hasn't been there, he hasn't done that. But a person who's been there, who's done that, has a lot to teach. So I see, if there's a small person or if there's a woman out there who's really, really good at the martial arts, they are the most qualified. And that's why when it comes to martial arts, the most qualified masters are the people that are Eastern. Because it just so happens that Eastern people, Asian people, are the smallest people out there in this world. Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, Korean, like all these people in the East are smaller people. The average height might be 5'5", 5'4". Whereas in America, the average height for a woman might be like 5'7". And the average height for men is like 6'1" probably. And you know, when you see somebody skillful in something, who's skillful in dancing, you could ask them, hey, can you teach me how to dance like you? But if you walk in the street, you see somebody who's 8 feet tall, you can't ask that person, can you teach me to be 8 feet tall too? There's nothing to teach. You might be admiring the person for being tall, but it doesn't mean that there's anything for him to teach you. And that's how I feel a lot of these people are. They win a few fights in the ring or in the cage, and then now all of a sudden they think that they're qualified to teach, and others think that they're qualified to teach just because they've won a few fights. But maybe they just won those fights because they're big people, not because they truly are proficient and skillful in the science of combat. Like, to me, a lot of it is strategy. A lot of it is mental. It's like if somebody's really good at playing chess, it has nothing to do with him being small or tall or large or whatever. It's that strategy, that intelligence. And there's a lot for him to teach you. But if you're just acknowledging somebody to be great in what he does just because you've won a lot of fights, like say a Kimbo Slice or something, okay, he won a lot of fights, but he's also a huge person. He's supposed to win a lot of fights, even without training in anything. What is there to teach? He's just born big. What can he teach? But if you have a woman or a smaller person who's constantly, consistently demonstrating proficiency in his craft, in his art, over people that are much larger, stronger, faster, younger, whatever the case may be, then there's something there. There's something to teach. There's something that they know. There's something that they're doing that's giving them an advantage over everybody else. There's something to a person that can outperform someone naturally when he could outperform somebody, a bunch of people who are even on steroids. There's something to that. Say, with the Olympics coming up, say there's 10 people running the 100-meter dash, and 9 of the people are proven to be strung up on steroids, and then one person's not, and then he ends up winning. Then there's clearly something to learn at that moment, because this person's outperforming 9 other people who are supposed to be have an advantage. But somehow this person still came out on top without having that advantage on his side. So, this video is almost like, in a way, trying to get people to see and understand that the martial arts needs to be reclaimed by the smaller people out there. I think it's being claimed by the wrong crowd of people that are promoting the wrong things, and they're not truly the masters of the martial arts. They're just a bunch of big people being violent under the name of the martial arts, and to the public that might be considered entertaining to them, but that's still not the true arts. That's not the true science. The science is somebody small, like a Bruce Lee, a Jet Li, or even a Mayweather, or even a Pacquiao, who they're small people, but then you see so much skill in what they do and how proficient they are in what they do, even against people that it might be double their size. Like a Bruce Lee sparring against a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Normally you would think the taller, bigger person would just crush the smaller person, but somehow the smaller person finds a way to overcome the larger person. And even during Bruce Lee's time, his teachers were telling him, these arts are not supposed to be for big people. They're supposed to be for the small people, the people that are the underdogs, the people that are victimized. The people that the ones that do get bullied. So the way that I see it is not just about, oh, my teacher could beat up your teacher, so that means my teacher's a better teacher. It's not that at all. It's like, maybe your teacher could only beat people up not because he's good, not because he's truly somebody that has mastered the arts of combat, but maybe he's just able to beat people up simply because he's just a big person. I mean, majority of the public out there, they don't know martial arts. And if you just have them fight, you'll see big people have that advantage. It has nothing to do with any type of specified, concentrated training that requires discipline and hard work, but it's just them taking advantage of what they're born with, opposed to a person who has been born weak, but then somehow through all this training he's become strong, he's become proficient in combat through hard work, not through cheating, not like Lance Armstrong or Brock Lesnar or John Jones or Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone or Jose Canseco or Sammy Sosa or the list goes on and on with all these people that are on steroids. Not that. I'm talking about just pure hard work and effort. And they might not have muscles popping out everywhere, but they're just good at what they do, and they just practice over and over again, and then they end up consistently demonstrating their proficiency in what they do over people that you would normally believe would demolish them, but they don't get demolished because they train so hard. You know, and there's just less and less small people out there, not even talking about Chinese people, but just small people out there in general to admire. Bruce Lee's like one of the very few. But it's like everybody out there, they're just dominating every single sport out there. And now they're trying to overtake the martial arts as well, to push Bruce Lee off the throne and replace him with Brock Lesnar. A big white guy strung up on steroids representing martial arts is just completely outrageous to me. Like, this is not martial arts. Stay within your field of pro wrestling, but leave the martial arts alone, because you don't belong here. The big strung up dude on on steroids does not belong in the martial arts, white, black, or whatever. You know, Bruce Lee has to remain on the throne and representing all the people out there that are considered disadvantaged, smaller, the people that are bullied, the introverts, the people, the so-called nerds, the intellectuals, the scholars, the people that are being underestimated out there. That's what the martial arts is for. That's what it's built for. Those types of people. Not all these football players, basketball players, wrestlers, strung up on steroids, boxers. That's not what the martial arts is for. And I'll take race out of the equation. It's not about black or white or Chinese or whatever. The martial arts is for the people who are naturally at a disadvantage because of how they're born. And then the martial arts is supposed to give them an equal playing field and possibly an advantage towards the people that are just born to have natural gifts. You know. But that's what I was thinking about. And I think it's something worth contemplating, you know, for everybody who's involved in this martial arts journey.